lights on this.
While we're fixing the tech, I will speak up, and I will call there we go. And I will call the Board of Finance meeting to order. Mika is going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order.
And I will do so. I will call to order the Board of Selectmen in this joint budget meeting.
And today is January 21st, 2025. There is no public comment, but we are delighted to welcome as number 1910-0 on your budget schedule, the Beecher Board of Education.
Thank you. We'll start with our Board of Education chairperson and vice chairperson.
I don't know, this chair makes me nervous.
Welcome, good to see you both.
Hi, good evening. I'm back again this year, representing the Woodbridge Board of Education, Lynn Piasek. With me this evening is the board's vice chair and the chair of our Board of Education Finance Committee, Stephen Lawrence, along with members of the district's dedicated and talented team, Superintendent Von Detenza and Director of Business and Operations, Donna Coonan. I'll note in the audience is our principal, Annalisa Sherman, and another board member, Erin Williamson. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with all of you this evening to present the Woodbridge School District's 2025-2026 proposed capital and operating budgets. As I have mentioned to these boards each year during our annual budget presentation, the mission of the Woodbridge School District is to provide a dynamic educational environment that challenges and empowers students to persevere as innovators and collaborators in preparation for their role as responsible citizens of the world. Today, Beecher Road School is providing quality educational experiences to 871 students from pre-K through grade 6, a total of 34 more than in January of 2021. While most of the districts in the state of Connecticut are experiencing declining enrollments, Beecher's enrollment continues to grow. And this is indeed a testament to our town's school district and the amazing things that are happening at Beecher Road School. I am proud to report once again that the students in the Woodbridge School District have scored number 1 in Durg B on the Smarter Balance test, scores in English and Language Arts, and number 2 in Durg B in mathematics. Learning and excitement is indeed flourishing in the classrooms of our district's schools. Tonight, you will be presented with a budget that reflects an overall 6.11% increase as compared to the current approved Board of Education budget. And while this increase appears large, Vonda and Donna will point out in their presentation necessary alterations in staffing for the current year that represent 1.59% of that total increase. In large part, the proposed increase reflects expenses required by contract or state statute, as well as the many unfunded mandates that are becoming more and more demanding with every passing year. As always, the proposed budget is based on known circumstances at this moment in time in regard to student population, staffing, and costs. Salaries and benefits represent over 81% of the entire budget, and that's an amount that's consistent with the current school budget. As a Board of Education member and a former Beecher Road School teacher for many decades, I believe that the budget you will see this evening meets the goals of the district, in addition to addressing the high expectations of the Woodbridge community in maintaining these standards for excellence in education. Education has always been a cherished value for the citizens of Woodbridge, with a belief that the district will constantly build on its successes. That's what we have done at Beecher Road School year after year, and what we strive to continue to do in the future. As the district's mission and vision directs, this budget plan will indeed support the academic, emotional, social, and physical needs of our students in order to prepare them for a successful future. So along with the continued support of the taxpayers in the Woodbridge community, I am confident that Beecher Road School will continue to build on its great successes and excellence. So I thank you for taking the opportunity to have Vonda and Donna present to you this evening our budget that was unanimously approved by the Board of Education. Do you have
Thank you.
anything you want to add?
I would merely echo the gratitude you expressed to Vonda and Donna for their leadership and really for thinking creatively, innovatively, and with a very strong sense of awareness of the fact that every town has limited resources. So really thinking very practically about what are the needs that will ensure the quality of the education without, breaking the budget in town. I would also thank our town leadership who have been wonderful collaborators on an ongoing basis with the team that leads Beecher Road School. That's made this whole process that much easier. So thank you.
Great.
And now, the important people.
Thank you.
We were very proud to have our Board of Education representatives here to join us. This is their budget that they adopted. I proposed one that reflected our district's interests and needs, and the board listened and asked questions, spent a few meetings, and adopted this with no adjustments. And they're very proud to stand behind the work and the partnership that we have with the town. So, thank you. Lynn touched on this. Our mission and vision for the district support the mission and vision for the school, and they also feed into the mission and vision of Amity. Our children are in a very interesting trajectory, you know that, and they attend Amity Regional Middle School and High School. It's important for us that all of those pieces align, and we use this mission and vision as a lens, as a filter to make our budget decisions, our educational decisions, and you will see that they do focus on preparing our children to continue to be learners who are flexible, collaborative, problem solvers. And, as you can see with our little art example, they're very aware of who some strong leaders in our country have been, and they will continue to grow into leaders with impact. So our strategic plan that we have in our district has prongs that support academic achievement and learning, inquiry and awareness of diversity in our world around us, as well as project-based learning as a strategy to help us become contemporary learners. That strategic plan is another lens which supports our mission and vision and also pushes forward our budget decisions. Why do we have a strategic plan? That strategic plan, again, really guides us. It's a stepping stone to help our children exemplify the portrait of the graduate that Amity High School and Middle School also have embedded. Our views are reflected in that work, even though that was developed at the Amity level. So our strategic plan helps us really engage in that process. It provides us clarity. As I said before, it really does focus our use of resources and decisions, and it keeps education at the center of learning. Our budget that you'll see tonight reflects several of the following components. It advances academic growth through programs and decisions and resources that are aligned with our strategic plan. That's important to our board and our community. It promotes student-centered teaching and learning. Again, that particular style is a great match for our very, very strong thinking, high-achieving population. It supports increased student need in the areas of academic growth and social-emotional well-being. It also addresses the movement of funding off an ARPA mental health worker grant to the operating budget. I'll talk more about that later. It addresses the increasing cost of supplies and equipment. We've tried to help defray the costs to families of supplies by putting some of that into our budget. It does factor in funds to help maintain our aging building and facility needs. I jumped ahead. It also addresses the supplies and equipment increasing cost for our building, and it helps maintain our class size levels, which are recommended by the Board of Education. Our chair touched on this. Our increase is a 6.1% overall increase over the current budget. I included this slide. It's really just a compilation of pictures, but it's important for me that you understand how the budget decisions, the operating budget, the capital budget, the grants that we access, our priorities, really help BRS as a school learn without borders. That really creates a very diverse learning experience, and it helps our children stay connected to each other. The resources that we use, the places that we go, the environments in which we learn are all supported by your decisions. We have children learning in the hallways. We have children on field trips. I apologize, some of those pictures transferred funny. We have children learning in the cafeteria. Thanks to some grant and building funds, we have children learning outside with wireless access. We have children using new reading materials. And so the fact that our children are connected across our school, which is a very large school, is important. Our board asked a lot about what's the return on the investment with some of the decisions that they've made over the past few years. I won't read everything on this slide, but you can see a sprinkling on the left that we have benefited from a variety of financial resources that have helped our district really meet with success. We used grant funds, we used the operating budget funds, we used the capital budget funds. We have a new curriculum revision process over the last few years since I arrived here that we're funding through the budget, and it is helping us not only stay current, but integrate important instructional strategies with the new science of reading and even project-based learning. We have new materials for our new reading program that were achieved through a grant. We have lots of impact spread out as many ways as we can that are creative. Our increased social worker came through a grant. Our professional learning comes through our operating budget. Our capital budget has improved our grounds and our site and our playground accessibility for all kinds of learners. You can just see a lot of impact and return on investment. And on the right-hand side, you'll see, again, just some data points that really celebrate what our school has to offer. We offer world language starting at the youngest levels. We have a very strong transition to Amity Middle School. That's not always common in a regional school district that feeds into another school system. We have character ed programs. We have students achieving awards at the highest levels. We have a great partnership with our PTO. You know, it's not necessarily most importantly, but another data point is our very high achieving academic growth and scores. Our budget drivers remain consistent. Our strategic plan guides us. Our enrollment, contractual obligations, and sustained services also impact our budget. Enrollment doesn't just have to be increasing enrollment. Our enrollment is increasing, but it's also increasing not in number, but in need and type of need. So the fact is our enrollment not only is increasing in bodies, but it's increasing in specialized need. We have more multi-language learners. They need to learn in small groups. We have more special education students that need to learn in small group settings or in unique settings. If we have a child of the hearing impaired or visually impaired, they need a special setting in which to learn. Those enrollment pieces impact not only staffing, but space. Our enrollment trends, again, you've seen these slides. We are very lucky to experience some sort of a gentle increase in our slope. This year is 24, 25. We're at actually 872 since that was created. And you can see that there is, again, a gentle increase. Thank you. In addition to the increase, however, and I touched on this earlier, is we have an increase in special education needs. And that is common across the state. It's actually common across the country, so it's not unusual. But it does impact our budget, and it does impact our space. And so what you can see over the last 3 years is we've provided you just an increase in our prevalence rate. We're up to 14%. We're still below the state average, but as our population has increased a little bit overall, from 850 to 885. The special education prevalence rate has increased, and if you break that down even just a little bit, you start to look at what are some of the examples of that. Well, we have children who need occupational therapy or mental health, social and emotional support, speech and language support. Those are just some examples. We don't just have special education children accessing those services. We also have general education students who receive intervention, 504, or general education support in our areas of occupational therapy, social emotional lessons, mental health support, speech and language support. So our population is benefiting from those services, and the numbers are increasing. Another pockets is increasing. This chart's pretty clear. Our multi-language learners. So not only the number of our multi-language learners are increasing, and I know that this is happening as well up at Dr. Byers' level, the diversity of our language is also increasing. You can see those are some of the more common languages spoken. That's not all of them that are spoken in our school. We have one full-time, thanks to support just, over the last couple of budgets. So we went from a part-time multi-language learning teacher to a full-time. So she works with all of these children in a variety of configurations over the week. I bring this to your attention because we're not asking in this budget, and I don't necessarily know if we would hit our numbers by the next budget cycle next fall, but we are obligated by law when we have 20 children of one language in our school, we need to provide a bilingual program. So we would need additional staffing for that. So if we hit that number, whenever we hit it at our October date for our attendance for the school, it has to be in the budget for the following year. So we're not there yet, but we're close. We're at 13 or 14 in a few different language areas. So, I would expect over the next 2 years that we will probably cap out over a 20, and we would need to increase with a bilingual teacher. So I just put that on your radar.
That number's 17 again?
No, it's 13 or 14,
No,
depending
no, no,
on.
the number that we would
20.
need to add, 20. Got it, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So in terms of staffing changes, we really don't have anything new in this budget. You might say that there are some things new, and so we want to address that right up front. We did add an additional teaching section in the fall to the budget to address class sizes in first grade. We are trying to maintain 1.5 social workers. We had 0.5, and about 2 years ago, a grant opened up an opportunity to add a full-time social worker. We took advantage of that. After COVID, we really have benefited from that. We see a huge need to continue that position, so we are trying to fund that through our operating budget and the IDEA grant. So that is in there. Again, we don't consider it new because it's not a new person, but it is new to the budget. And we did add 0.2 to a current part-time speech and language practitioner to address increased service need. In terms of non-certified staff, again in the fall, we were required, due to new students moving in, to add a few, I think it was 4 special education paraeducators. So that was a requirement by law. We had to add it, but it wasn't in the budget last year. So when you compare those numbers. And we also are trying to maintain additional hours that we added to the North Secretary desk position last year.
Okay, I'm going to give Vonda a break and talk for a bit. The next slide is a pie chart, and that just shows the breakdown of our various categories. Salaries and benefits at 81% is pretty standard in education. Some of the other categories, the professional services would have our substitutes, legal, audit would be in there. Property services would have service contracts on our various HVAC, various building systems. Other purchase services would have insurance. It looks pretty similar to previous years. We did a slide this year, changes from last year to the current
proposed budget here in these various categories. So you can see that the categories of salaries, benefits, and other purchase services are the categories where we're seeing an increase. Our salaries and benefits together, the increase of our $1,075,000 increase, $875,000 of that is in salaries and benefits. Transportation, both general education and special education together, transportation costs are going up $115,000. Our contract, the bus rates are going up 7%. And in addition to that 7%, we have some additional needs in outplaced student transportation. And we also have some additional outplaced tuition of about close to $85,000 next year. So those three categories, if you add up on the right-hand side, the $875,000 and the transportation, you know, that's just about our increase right there. All other categories are about neutral, some increase, some decrease. And so we still have some assumptions. You know, I estimated a 9% increase in our medical insurance premiums for next year. We don't yet know. We are going out to market again, and we should, in another month and a half's time, learn if we have some. Hopefully, we can find some savings that will come in better than we have estimated in this budget. Transportation. As I just said, of the $115,000 increase, about $45,000 of that relates to our general education transportation, and $70,000 relates to special education transportation. We have some additional PT, physical therapy and occupational therapy services in here, but they're also, the special services director worked really hard to find cuts in other places, consultants that we no longer will need because we now have a part-time school psychologist hired. That has been in the budget, has been very hard to fill, and she trimmed some of her own professional development just to, you know, try to make room for some of these other things. And again, as I mentioned earlier, outplaced tuition is rising 8% over the current year, and that's just about $85,000. I sort of did a bar graph here, and if you look at this bar, represents our increase, our $1 million, $77,000 increase. The orange section is salaries, the red section is benefits, and the purple section is other purchase services, and both transportation and outplaced tuition are in that purple section. One thing I will draw your attention to, if you see I drew a line at $280,000. The 5 positions that we needed to add this year because of people moving in and class size, the salaries and benefits for those people take up, you know, $280,000 approximately of that $1 million add. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. And there's a few categories, if you see, that are decreased. We think we can do a little better on our utilities and some equipment that we have decreased our ask for this year. Let's see, so we don't anticipate any change in our water utility. Electricity rates remain the same, but as with the pool being closed, we are saving quite a bit on electricity this year. And we think we are locked in for almost three more years on our natural gas, but we do think as the rates are a little better this year, we may be able to blend and extend, and we have taken our natural gas down a little bit, hoping that that's the case, or believing that that's the case. And then here's a utility trend over the past 9 years. It's very plain to see when the pool became non-operational. We had quite a bit of savings there in 24. And then 25, I believe when we adopted this budget, we didn't yet know that the pool would be closed this year. So that is just a budgetary number. We will come in better than that. And then we are inching back down in 26 based on It's not quite as good. I think we all know we are all paying a little extra in our utility bills. I can't think of the 3 words for what that's called, but there's some charges on all of our electric bills now.
Public benefits charge.
Thank you, public benefits charge.
So just to kind of pop out an area that sometimes different groups like to know about in terms of additional requests. So embedded in our budget to support our work with technology, our grade 5 Chromebooks and charging stations, interactive touch boards to replace the smart boards that were becoming obsolete. We have over the past few years tried to replace a few grade levels at a time. And so this finishes out the, this is 14 boards, I believe, and this finishes out the classroom sections and some special education sections. And then we just have a few special areas that we'd like to get into the following year's budget. Document cameras also need to be a part of the new line touch boards. And our littlest learners, the kindergartners, when they get their boards, we have to have an adjustable height mount because otherwise they won't be able to reach them, and they are multi-use for many users at a time. So we did have to embed a little bit of money to bring those boards down to a usable height. Yeah. Safer than a step stool. Okay. This is the same information, just in another way for you to see. Obviously, the red areas were areas of decrease. So when you look at technology, and I know I just mentioned the technology that we were purchasing, you might be wondering how is it that we have a reduction? We have a reduction because last year we piloted Chromebooks with 6th graders. They still have access to iPads. Class sets of iPads are available. Our younger learners in younger classrooms all use iPads with additional components to them. We are an Apple distinguished school. We use Apple products in a variety of very creative ways. Chromebooks have been successful at 6th grade, and when we decided as a team to move those to 5th grade, it did create a savings. So that's that savings. I don't exactly know what the internet utilities telephone, what is that?
Oh, we just have a little better deal on some of our telephone.
A better deal. Who doesn't love a better deal? Superintendent reductions, you might be wondering what I reduced. So I did listen, to all of the presentations. We did find a $4,000 overlap of something that somebody had ordered in 2 different buckets. That's not uncommon. So we found that. And the other piece I reduced was a very healthy request for books. We were able, through our surplus last year, to increase our classroom libraries in grades 4, 5, and 6. And so I did chip away at some of that book request because I feel like we are in a really good place with new K-3 reading materials and new classroom libraries in 4 through 6. We are still acquiring new books for our media center, but I did just reduce it a little bit, if you're wondering what that was.
For our grant funds, I guess maybe the top line is that we are getting about $86,000 less in grant funds than in the previous year. All the titles and the IDEA are entitlements, and you can see to the right what we're using them on. The open choice is an estimate. We get approximately $4,000 times the 18 students that we take through the open choice program, and we use those funds to offset our transportation costs. We are required to contribute toward the Ezra Academy's school nurse, and we get a little bit of money from the state to offset that. And then the pre-K tuition, obviously that's not a grant, but we do get about in the neighborhood of $30,000 that we use toward the pre-K salary teacher through tuition from our families that participate in our pre-K program.
So that's about $400,000 in grant funds that we're able to access.
And we mentioned earlier that the mental health worker, we were able to find about $20,000 in IDEA to use toward that salary, so that the entire salary won't have to be borne by the general fund next year. Our capital requests, we only have one new project this year that you haven't seen before, and that's right there on top, the HVAC retro commissioning. if you're aware that all school districts are required by January 1st of 2025 to have an indoor air quality audit. We had some surplus in, I think it was 23, that we didn't do that through a capital project. We had some surplus and we decided to use some of that surplus to do the audit. The audit showed that we have excellent air quality at Beecher Road School. The one comment takeaway from that audit was that they do recommend that we do this retro commissioning to show us the efficiency of our HVA system. We know the air quality is good, but we do not know the efficiency of the system. So that is something that we have added. The other items, since you've heard them before, I'll just kind of go through them. We have just one area of asbestos left, and that's under the art room sink. So we have a project for to redo the casework and flooring in the art room, and then we also the band room has kind of some smelly old carpet, so that would be an ideal thing to redo as well. There used to be asbestos outside the band room, but that has been taken care of last year with some of our
this past
surplus
summer.
as well. The replacing flooring in classrooms A4, A1, A8, that is like the first grade wing, and there's just a lot of old lifted tiles with little pieces missing out of them that are, quite frankly, a bit of a tripping hazard. The south playground. We do really want to express our gratitude that the town has chosen to share some of your ARPA funds with us, and we are able to refresh the north playground poured rubber surface with that. And we do have a project scheduled for that. The south playground, we didn't have enough to include that, but if we were able to have another approximately $21,000, we could update that with some fiber, natural fiber kind of tan bark stuff in that box. Let's see, the next program, or the next project is, there's just about 5-6 classrooms in the rotunda, S-wing around the rotunda of old 1970s sinks, casework, the cabinets surrounding it, orange laminate, kind of beat up that, over time we would just like to replace. The exterior of the building is in need of repainting. There are the fascia boards at the top, the birds, can get into them and make little holes and homes in there. And then there's just, kind of some unsightly, where they pull away vines and stuff that grow up the building where it pulls away the paint. And so that needs to be done. We didn't, we put it out a few years knowing that, we're still determining what's going to occur with the building. But we just want to be on record as saying that is something that hasn't been done in a while. The future planning, the last two items on there, the unit ventilators and the elevator. Those are just both very old items, 30 years old, way beyond their useful life. Aren't necessarily things that we're asking to happen in next year, but we just kind of want to be on record as saying, the day is going to come when these things are going to break and it's going to be expensive, and we just want everyone to know they're there, out there looming for us, so to speak. The unit ventilators are the heat mechanisms up the hallway as you go from the south school up north, and they are working. But and then again, the elevator, we always tell the funny stories when the repair guys come. They always say, "Oh, I haven't seen one of these, forever." And so it's quite old, and it's actually, even can't really get replacement parts in this country anymore. There may come a day when, if it does go down, that we have to mail the board, to China for repair. And that is how we get, our food to the cafeteria. And
From the freezers.
It would be difficult on the kitchen staff if we were without that for a great length of time. Okay, so that's kind of all the capital.
And that really brings us to sum up that our current budget does stand at a 6.1. It was at a 6.1 when I recommended it to the board, and that is where it sits. The board made no adjustments to it. And when you look at the last page, it's just, again, one more visual. The board really wanted us to highlight for you that it is a 6.1, and out of that, there is a percentage that was increased after this year had started. And then we have a little comment from our kindergarten. Keep the great work going. Found on our halls this fall.
Well, thank you. We could turn the lights on. And are there any questions on either the capital or the operations side that anyone would like to ask at this point? It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to take in.
If you think of something later,
Absolutely. You'll hear from us. You know
and
that's
we
true.
will answer.
Does anybody have anything
Yeah.
relevant on their mind right now?
Thank you for this presentation. I just want to make sure I understand, because you've been highlighting that the positions that were added during this year, those came from your existing budget though, right? That was not a different sum of money, right?
Yeah, we have not come back to the town for additional money. We
Right.
had some.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
We have some tuition. We had, some outplaced tuition that didn't end up being needed. And so we had a little pocket there that's kind of saving us. And then, as you know, turnover, a few teachers
Yep.
retire, there's another little pocket. So
Yep.
we are managing it with the current budget that we have.
Okay, so when we see in your documentation that you sent over to us, the teacher line item increasing, that's only because you made an internal move during this current year from other line items into teaching, and now you're embedding it as a teaching line item when it had previously been a different line item.
Mhm,
Is
that's
that it?
correct.
Okay. I also had two quick questions about your capital presentation. So you mentioned retro commissioning of the air handling system there. Is that something, obviously when we installed it back when we did the renovation 2015 or so, there was commissioning that took place then. Is this redoing that same type of report? Is that report no longer valid?
I think there's been I'm sorry, Donna.
That's okay. I believe this is taking a look at the larger spaces. Everything to date has looked at the classroom spaces. I believe that this is taking a look at our large-scale spaces like the gymnasiums, the cafeteria. It's looking at that as well as the efficiencies.
Yeah, those should have been part of the original commissioning, because we didn't have air conditioning anywhere in the building, and then we put it everywhere in the building, so that was part of that process. I just wondered if some of those existing reports could
The
help
entire
you.
report's on our website, but they indicated that as there's been a change in use of different rooms
Yep.
and things, that it should be looked at.
Okay, and then I guess the other question I had for you is that you mentioned the A-wing flooring. Is that flooring that was not replaced in the renovation? Or is it replacing the renovation floor?
I think
I
this
don't-
is
I think
old.
this is
I would
old.
say this is not renovated flooring. Do you agree with that?
I can probably.
Used to be
answer
your
that.
classroom, right?
And that was my classroom. In the renovation where they did the, windows and the floors were not, part of that. My classroom, I believe, was the last classroom where the road was taken up and, which was A6. So A1, those were all done prior to 2014, I believe.
So when they had taken up the asbestos there in like 2004, 2005, that's the flooring it's 20-year-old flooring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Just a quick,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I know that this year's kindergarten class was a little smaller because of the new guidelines from the state. Is there any expectation in terms of what happens next year as a result of this? And is that factored into this already?
The predictor would be that it would swing a little bit larger, but we have class sizes of 15 right now, so there's plenty of room for those learners. We didn't adjust those kindergarten classrooms because the learners that were coming in the fall, some of them were very needy because they were starting very young.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I saw in the paperwork that we had to look at, number of 853 students predicted for next year. Is that wrong, or is it, are we expecting a down,
We're
a
not.
slightly smaller number?
We had an earlier study that got updated.
This
So
says 82.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is what we changed.
Yep.
We had an earlier study when we first updated our information for you guys.
And
that
this came
showed
in
that.
late November.
And then we had the study updated in November, and so we
So that number should just be changed or something, or?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's an
that's an
updated
old number.
version, yeah.
Oh, that was why I was confused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Just for clarity, your capital conversation is not about the big picture that we're going to be talking about next month. I just want, for the public purposes,
Correct.
it's two separate animals.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Other questions or issues?
Just a comment, congratulations on your DERG results, and
Thank you.
it's very impressive, very
It's a
nice.
strong credit to the staff. It's the teachers and the paras and everybody.
Thank you.
Parents,
Really,
yeah.
right. It's the community. And you honor it by supporting their children.
We will certainly do our best.
So thank you.
Takes a
Thank you.
village.
Takes a village.
It does.
Or a town. It takes a town. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question.
On the HVAC. Are you having any issues with it now that you're requiring this retro commissioning or everything is operating as
That was just a suggestion
changing
that they made.
filters, everything else, what
Yep.
you have to do is
Yep.
just, okay.
You said it was a matter of law, that
It was
This-
to have the
Quality
study.
is the matter.
Quality.
Quality, yeah.
This was just their next
Efficiency.
follow-up
This is-
suggestion.
Okay.
We've been
Because
very
this just
careful.
includes the Van Zelm
Yes, and the wings,
piece
yep.
of it. This does not include any retro work, any additional work that may be required as a result of what they find, that's all.
Okay.
Was it Van Zelm who did the original commissioning?
Yes.
Wings is the air balancer, I
Wings-
think, or
Wings
sub
will balance,
of
but I
Van
think-
Zelm.
It was Van Zelm who did the original. That's the reason I'm asking is, you know,
We're doing it again.
we're doing it all over, so, okay.
All right. Great,
Will,
thank
will,
you.
will the funding for the abatement complete the asbestos remediation? Because I've seen this, I saw this
Ours
last year,
spot.
Yes.
seen it again this year, so we're gonna be 100% asbestos-free next year, hopefully?
Well, I still think that there's probably little pieces in some of the old windows and things like that, but in terms of.
So are we putting that off for next year, or like,
The
how are we?
asbestos abatement?
Yeah,
That's in our capital requests.
for this year, for next
It's in
fiscal year.
it's-
Yeah.
It's the one
Next
that got
year.
moved forward,
Yeah.
so yeah, in 26.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if next year, when we come to this, are we gonna see more asbestos
We should not.
remediate? Okay, so, awesome, thank
Should
you.
not.
The special ed transportation increase of 156,000. That, as I see it, it's a combination of the paras plus the actual bus costs, right? Associated with transporting these 18 or so students
There's no
to and from, right?
The labor of the people that ride the bus isn't in there. It's just the cost of the buses themselves.
So there's a slide you've got that increases special education transportation. Baseline budget with increases, decreases. Transportation regular is increase of 44. Then there's special education tuition and transportation total, and that's an increase of 156.
So, yes, if a student is outplaced, it might be an additional bus or bus run or something. Or
Some
we
children
sometimes
require-
can share
Yep.
with Amity or Orange or something if we both have students going to the same place, so it might not be a bus that we have to pay for on our own.
And
But
some of our in-district children require specialized
Right, so
transportation.
it's a significant increase from last year. I'm just trying to figure out what drove that increase. Is it a change in the population? Or,
Yes.
additional outplace tuition.
and how about how many increase more or less were
It's
there?
not, we shouldn't say in that we're such a small district, it could be considered identifying or something, so.
But the addition of a child or
Got it.
two definitely tilts that number.
Okay. How many Chromebooks or in charging stations does that $53,000 spend cover? Just ballpark?
That's for 5th grade.
Yeah.
So it's class sizes of, say, 20. It's probably 6. I can't remember.
To 6th grade next year.
I can't remember either. I think it's 6
So that-
classes.
So that 53,000 covers roughly 20 or so.
120 or
Per.
something, yeah.
It's about
Chromebooks.
120.
120 or 20?
120.
120.
Total Chromebooks, probably.
Good to know. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Stay and support Jen.
Okay, we are going to tab number 1920 is up next, and that is Amity Board of Education. Safe driving out there, guys. It's icy. What did I just do? Did I say 1920? I did, right? Yes. It's a miracle. I know how to do it.
That's for the general.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. You are the first of the town finance committees that I will be at, so it's nice to have a dry run here and to be able to present to you this evening. I'm joined by Ms. Loomis, who will be helping me and certainly able to answer questions later. Yeah, thanks. So the Amity Regional Board of Education is guided by Connecticut general statutes in terms of developing our budget. I have highlighted the most key word here, which is that we are required to develop an estimated budget because the state in its wisdom actually realized that for our school district, as with most other districts, when you start developing a budget in September and are still dealing with the enrollments of the current year, but you're building a budget for the subsequent school year, there is a lot that can change in those 10 months. And so this is an estimate of what we anticipate the costs will be to run the district for next year. It's also guided by the Amity Board of Education mission and goals. The goals have always been to continuously improve instruction, to enhance the efficient and effective use of resources, and to foster a positive school climate. And it is guided by our Amity it's our BOA portrait of the graduate, and it's really what our community values and hopes to see our students to be competent and able to do upon leaving our 4 school districts. The budget process, as I mentioned, begins in September. We typically have 3 major drivers that sort of create the foundation of the budget, that being contractual obligations, federal and state mandates, and then the school and department requests. We work together from September essentially through December to find efficiencies, to eliminate redundancies, to prioritize requests and maybe sort of think of them in a 5-year plan and put them off until we're able to develop what is my recommended budget, which I'm presenting to you tonight. Then I go on the grand speaking tour out to the 3 boards of finance for our 3 towns. We have several meetings with our Amity Finance Committee, our Board of Education, and then we started last year joint meetings between those 2 entities so that they could really sort of look and better understand the budget. We get all that feedback, and then ultimately I will present a budget that hopefully is adopted by both the AFC and the Board of Education before going to referendum. Our budget drivers are probably not that different from those that Vonda just presented. We have contractual salary increases, healthcare costs, unfunded state mandates, uncertain state revenue. We have academic performance goals, which are not unlike some of the goals in the strategic plan that you just saw for Beecher. We have technology requests, pupil services, or commonly called special education, some personnel requests, and increasing enrollment. As you will see, driven primarily from Woodbridge. The increasing enrollment doesn't necessarily result in a higher budget. We are able to weather increasing enrollment because of our size and how a middle and high school is structured much better than an elementary district can. But it also means that we probably can't make reductions because we still need all of the staff and personnel that we currently have. So I always look at this slide first. It should look familiar to people who've sat on this board. Teachers and staff make up such a huge component of the budget that I always look to see what their contractual increase is compared to the budget request. Because if their contractual increase is higher than where our budget request is, it means we're making cuts and reductions in other areas because the staff tends to remain consistent, if not have a few additional personnel. So you can see their contractual increase for this year, and this is for all staff, certified and non-certified, is 3.86%. The budget request, as we get towards the end, you'll see is 3.66. So we're already at that point where we've made reductions in other areas. Our health insurance data, we are self-insured. This is great when our claims are low, but it ends up in a unspent surplus that is returned to the towns as a credit in March. But if the claims are high, we have to maintain a reserve. So our actuaries actually categorize the reserve as either strong, moderate, or low. We maintain a reserve of 18%, which is sort of right between the moderate and low range. That is a risk area for us because we are small and we can get bigger swings in our health insurance claims. But at the same time, it does help us to reduce our budget and to have less impact on our taxpayers. We've been comfortable at this number for the past, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, and this budget still reflects that same 18% reserve. Our district priorities do guide the budget. We do want to continue the support for our comprehensive academic programming, which means we have humanities and STEM classes, grades 7 through 12. We are doing a lot of work through state grants to increase the number of AP classes and most particularly our dual enrollment classes. Those are the classes that students can take concurrently with a college or university. They earn college or university credit as a high school student, which is then transferable when they enroll in a college or university, a savings which is passed on to a taxpayer if you consider their parents or the student the taxpayer. We are also have been increasing intervention supports through the support of our towns and our boards of ed, and we want to maintain those. And we want to make sure that it's not just focused on what we would call the core academics, but we're providing a well-rounded education so that we have visual and performing arts, career technical education, world languages, health, and PE. We do have a priority to support our math instruction in our Spartan Academy, which is our high school alternative education program for students for whom the traditional high school setting is not quite the right fit. And we also need to address an increasing enrollment of multi-language learners because the kids that Vonda mentioned are moving on up to the high school. So just from perspective, in 2021, we had 17 students who were identified as a multi-language learner. We just enrolled our 42nd student last week. So again, it's a number that very much mimics the pattern that we're seeing at the elementary level. We do need to continue our efforts to address chronic absenteeism. This was a challenge that was presented as a result of the COVID pandemic. We've made a lot of progress in that area, but our numbers still have not returned to pre-pandemic levels. And part of that is our school engagement specialist, who was funded by the ARPA mental health grant. We got it a year after the elementary districts, so we're still in the process of absorbing that position into our operational budget. We still have some grant funds to support that position, but it's not, the state reduces it each year, so it's at a lower level than what the current budget has. We're in the process of major revisions to our curriculum, some of it guided by new Connecticut standards, others because it just hasn't been revised since like 2016. And with those curriculum revisions, we need both the staffing support, but then also sometimes instructional resources that are aligned with that new curriculum. We continue to support interim assessment data and resources to provide intervention for students who are struggling learners. And we now have a 1/2 credit portfolio portrait of the graduate assessment that will be implemented for the current 11th grade. And we do need some stipends to help support the students so that they can successfully complete that and earn that 1/2 credit. We do want to continue our support for our athletics and for our arts programs. We're maintaining a one-to-one student device program. We need a technology-supported learning environment, so interactive whiteboards. They do have a finite length of use, and pretty much every single classroom has one, and all of our teachers use them on daily throughout the course of instruction. We need textbooks and instructional resources, some of which is aligned to curriculum revision. And then we do have facilities improvements, both annual maintenance as well as a 5-year capital plan. Unlike the town or the local school districts where the town owns the building and is responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep, and it becomes part of your capital budget, we have to maintain our own buildings, so we have our own capital budget and 5-year capital plan. Pupil services, or like I said, special education, is a significant piece of our pie chart as well. And there are some fixed budget costs that we just have no control over. Our transportation services are increasing anywhere from about 2.5% to 8%. Our tuition for out-of-district placements is going up anywhere from about 2 to 8%. And then the salaries for our certified and non-certified staff members are in the 2.5% to about the 4.5% area.
What is the disparity? Why? I mean, that's a significant range.
Yes. So the disparity, it sometimes depends on the program itself. It depends if it is a what they would call a state public or a private out-of-district placement. So the RESCs, places like ACES and CES, are considered the state placements, and then we do have some private residential placements that may have a higher cost. And then it's also the services that a student needs. So some of them will charge a la carte for things like OT or PT or speech and language services, and so that will result in a higher cost for that student.
Thank you.
The other thing is that we have some things that we just can't control. So we have one rising out placement coming from one of our elementary districts. I don't know which one, so I can't tell you that. We do have another rising student who requires a very specialized one-to-one nurse who also serves a double function as a paraeducator. So that is a high-cost additional staff member that we will need to add to address this student need. We have registered behavioral therapists. That number, while those individuals are required, the number of RBTs has actually decreased since 2 years ago. So we have students with different needs, so we need fewer of them, but we still need them. We've had to add some additional transportation for special education students attending our vocational agricultural schools. We've had an increase in our homeless population. I'm sure it's probably something that Vonda's also noticed too, and we are responsible for providing for homeless students, particularly transportation. And so we are seeing an increase there, and then our legal fees that are connected to special education services. So much like the Beecher budget, our pie chart is about I'd say 77% salaries and benefits. You can see special education takes up a significant chunk of the pie. Purchase services would be legal, our transportation costs, our techs and supplies. Debt service is the one thing unique to us that you wouldn't see in a local school district budget because the town assumes the debt service, unlike the regional school district. And the other is kind of everything that doesn't fit into those very broad categories and obviously represents a very small portion of the budget. We do have concerns over a couple of unfunded state mandates, the first being the Connecticut Paid Sick Leave Act, which is going to require us to give 40 hours of paid sick leave annually. That paid sick leave also comes with the cost of the substitutes because, as I've explained to several of our state legislators, we are not a place where a person can just leave and we just leave the position empty. I need somebody to fill that spot because the children need to be supervised and the services need to be delivered. We also had the FMLA expansion, and so what it did is lower the threshold to qualify for FMLA. The impact for that means that typically our paraeducators and some of our tutors, because of working 180 school days and each day is around 6.5 hours, they actually never hit the threshold to qualify for family medical leave. Now they do with the lower threshold, which is great, and I'm in support of that. But again, when they are on family medical leave, we have to find the substitutes to cover for their absences. We also have a new school climate and bullying complaint process. This puts additional burdens onto the school districts for administering the school climate surveys as well as the school climate improvement plans. Again, good things we were doing all along, but they do have some additional requirements that again just requires somebody on my staff to take on that responsibility and to meet those statutory needs. The other thing that we're concerned about, you can go ahead, Tara, is the uncertain state revenue. So excess cost, which very briefly is the amount of money that the state will give to school districts if the cost of a special education placement is really exorbitant. It has been at 67% and decreasing. Fully funded, we should get about 85% of that. That's the same for Woodbridge, so this isn't a concern just for me, but it's a concern for everybody. And every time we get updates from the state, that percentage just gets shaved down a little bit more. The education cost sharing, we don't actually get that money, but you get that as towns, and that is going down for two of our towns. I actually think it's going up for Woodbridge, but it's because of your increased enrollment. And then there's this cap right now on the magnet and ag science tuition. So we were capped at 58% of the tuition rate, which was a great benefit for us. And the state was making up the other portion, but we don't know if that's continuing for the next fiscal year. So that also remains a fiscal uncertainty, and we probably won't know where that answer finally falls until about June when they finally vote on the state budget. Our debt service is going down, so I've highlighted the debt service line for 25-26. It's decreasing by about $1.4 million, and that is what's actually helping to drive the lower request that we are bringing forward tonight. It's essentially offsetting what would have been the contractual increases just in terms of sheer dollar amount. This is really more for your sort of long-term planning. We are starting to talk about a potential bond referendum for 2027. We did a bond referendum in, was it 2020, which addressed some of the needs we had at the high school. The middle schools really were last renovated in 1996 and haven't really been touched since then. So we are looking at roof replacements, HVAC replacements for the middle school, our gymnasium stage lighting, field upgrades, exterior painting. The fire pump house needs to be replaced in Bethany. It's currently under a study, but we'll probably put that into the bond for the actual repair. And the TBD is really the placeholder for the things that we think the high school might need, but we just haven't really put onto this list quite yet. We do have the opportunity to set aside up to 2% of our unspent funds into what is now called the Fund for Educational Expenses. Our board has adopted a policy that those funds for educational expenses will go to capital projects. Currently, we have money set aside for the renovation of the high school library media center, and then we're hopeful that we will be able to carry those funds forward and do renovations to the middle school library media centers in the subsequent years. So our initial budget requests from the principals, department chairs, and district staff came in at about 4.3% increase. We had a lot of discussions, reduced redundancies, and were able to bring the budget down to 3.82% over the current year funding. That's what we presented to the board back in December. And then we continue to look for further reductions throughout December and early January. And I presented to the AFC and to you a budget increase that's 3.66% above the current year's funding. This budget supports our commitment to maintain academics, athletics, and the arts. It supports student intervention needs, particularly with Spartan Academy, and it's supporting the Portrait of the Graduate culminating portfolio credit. The budget is also supporting student activities. We did dedicate some money for our drama productions, essentially the school musicals at both the middle school and the high school. We did some field trip expenses to offset the cost that's actually being incurred by our parents and our families. We added a middle school late bus so that they would be able to increase the number of days that a student can stay for extracurricular activities at the middle school. And we put some money into the Amity Advocates program, which is currently an elective course at the high school where our students go out and work in the community. We have addressed technology needs. The most important one there are our teacher devices. So our teacher devices were essentially all purchased either the year before or the year of COVID, which means they're going to be coming up on 6 to 7 years old. The good news is that that's twice as long as the student devices are lasting, so at least our adults are doing a better job than the kids at maintaining them. The bad news is that a 6 to 7 year old laptop, for what our teachers have to do, they're really becoming dysfunctional. And so we replaced 40 of the oldest ones this year, but we are looking to replace the other 260 in next year's budget so that our teachers have a functional device. The technology replacements include the interactive whiteboards as well as a specialty lab. And we are looking at our technology infrastructure, which was last updated about 5 years ago. That's essentially the Wi-Fi, the servers, the networks. That has a finite life. We're not at the end yet, but kind of like the story with the elevator, when it goes, we become unfunctional, and we can't really function without a wireless network and servers and everything that runs all the computers that we rely on every day. The budget supports curriculum and instruction, including, like I said, all that work that goes towards our curriculum revision, as well as professional development for our staff. It supports a new teacher evaluation platform because we just updated a new teacher evaluation system. It provides for pupil services and student mental health, including a new multi-language learner teacher, and that offset for that mental health specialist who's working with chronic absenteeism. And then it has the short and long-term facilities improvements. And the budget is guided a lot by enrollment. And so these are the enrollment numbers. They're the October 1 enrollment numbers. You can see Bethany has a very moderate increase of 2 students from October 1. Orange actually sees a decrease in students, but where you are going to feel it the most here in Woodbridge is the increase in student enrollment in the Amity district. Again, it's kind of mirroring exactly what you're seeing at the elementary school, and now it's rolling up to us in grades 7 through 12. So while overall the budget increase is 3.66%, the percent variance to Woodbridge specifically is 7.85%. We do collect data on all the other school districts across the state. we're part of DIRG B, and right now you can see that the range for DIRG B is 3.64 to about 7. So we are on that low end for DIRG B school district budget increases, and the average is right around 5.31. And we'll continue to monitor that and hopefully remain on that low end for comparable school districts. Like I said, I have a lot of meetings coming up. That's the list of them. And there's 3 important dates there. On February 24th, the Finance Committee has to make a recommendation of a budget to the Board of Education. The Board of Education has to make a recommendation, and it has to be the same as what the Finance Committee recommended on March 10th. And then we go to referendum to our 3 towns on May 6th. And I would just say thank you for having me. Thank you for supporting our Amity students. We are using the same process that we did last year, so we will have a running Word document. If you have any questions that come up, please send them to Mr. Lofters. He will be able to email them to Ms. Loomis and I. And we essentially check the document once a week. We put the answer there, but it's a good place to go because you'll see the questions everybody else is asking with the answers, and it's also where you would be able to get an answer directly to your questions.
Does anyone have any questions tonight?
As you said before, it's a lot to take in.
Well, it's interesting that Woodbridge only makes one kind of pie. I think that's your point. Any thoughts, questions?
I'm just wondering about the average daily attendance trends. Do you project out? Do you know if this is our high water mark and then will subside? I'm hoping to hear.
We do have a projection, and
Actually, I think that next year we're going to see an increase as well. And I'm just moving kids up from the grades.
Yep.
Of 14 students, but the difference is Orange is projected to go down 10 and Bethany to go up 4. So probably not as drastic as this year, so this might be the most severe difference between the districts. And then after that, it looks like Orange is going to see a significant increase 2 years from now.
Okay. So I guess the only real impact here is the difference between bonding projects over multiple years so that it smooths out the communities that have the ups and downs of enrollment. If it's a 20-year life of a capital improvement, the way it's being paid for is also smoothed along with enrollment. But if you take money from your capital non-recurring or whatever we're calling that now, in the year you're taking it, that's the year that the expenditure is happening, and then it's not sort of smoothed out over the ensuing 20 years because you're not taking on debt. So I guess you're balancing whether we're taking on debt and paying
Extra fees,
costs
to take on that debt.
Right, yeah.
and the life of the project and what it is that
Right.
we're looking to do. So, I mean, again, the potential bond, part of the incentive in doing that is all those things would be ready about that time to be replaced. Whereas if it was just one of those things, it probably wouldn't be worth the
Cost of
bond.
bonding. Right. And right now, you're only projecting that the library or library media center at the high school and then potentially the middle schools, those are the only projects that you're going to fund that way, or?
Right now, the other one I think that we'll have to pay attention to is the technology infrastructure, because that's, first of all, not a good thing to bond because it lasts for such a short length of time. And I think our other uncertainty is, I think if it breaks quickly and everything breaks. So that's kind of more like an emergency, but for long-range planning right now, it's the library media centers.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Sure. Can you remind
David?
us what last year's
I'm sorry.
percentage increase was?
It was 2.49 or 3.49 last year.
3.49.
3.49.
Total. That was overall.
Yes.
But to us, it was more.
So I just want to point out that with the debt service you mentioned, with the reduction in interest rates, the increase would be 5.8% or something.
Yes.
Say that again, Donovan, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that.
Without the reduction in interest rates, debt service, the increase would have been 5.8%.
David had a question.
Yeah, do you anticipate that the state portion of you were talking about some of the transportation costs, increases in special needs? Do you see a shortfall in special needs, or is that another potential risk that?
We're estimating that the excess cost is going to be that low number. I'm tracking the legislative bills coming out right now, and there's probably 10 of them where they're saying fully fund, special education excess cost. Unfortunately, I think they've always had those bills in place, and we've always requested it. And it will require that, if you've kept up with anything in the paper, loosening the fiscal guardrails, because they've underfunded it for so long that it will be a huge investment of money to get it caught up again. So I don't think we, and I bet you are not confident we would ever get the 85% that we need.
Right, and this is a bad year because of the budget situation. It's hard for you. I appreciate that. The other thing I noticed in your past years, a lot of times these reports have in the first 20 pages or so a lot of repetition of what was done in the previous year, including some numbers that sometimes, I remember between 23 and 24, I think we had the exact same number in the cost savings and efficiencies talking about it, which, couldn't have been possible because it was the same sentence. This year it may be different. I haven't had a chance to check it, but looking on page 14, the third point says that our prudent financial management has kept budget increases as low as possible. Blah, 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 blah. Ending with transparent fiscal reporting and prudent spending have played a key role in 13 consecutive years of the budget passing on the first try. Now, we know that's not true, so.
Well, there was 13 years before we had a failure.
I'm sorry?
There was 13 years in a row before we had the failure 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, I see. That did imply. I thought it meant that this was an updated thing. I see. So that was previous to the last 2 years.
Well, and then last year it passed on the first
I would
referendum.
prefer it to be made more clear. That just sounds like you're trying to sell something that isn't true to me. And so you talked about it being at the very low end of similar. At the 3 point, for Woodbridge, you're way above the top end because we're at the 7.85%.
Yes.
And if you're at that suggests that we're getting a little bit bigger share of the overhead expenses because we have more kids. But what you're saying about your budget isn't true for us.
Correct.
For us, we're at the very high end. So I appreciate your being here first. Wondering where those homeless students where are they counted in who gets to pay for the homeless? If they're homeless, what?
So the district that they were living in when they became homeless is responsible for the cost of their education.
So you attribute them to the other. They don't just get, I would think.
No.
That's unfortunate.
And that's not, again, unique to us. That is a federal law.
Federal law that they are.
That the district that they were living in at the point they became homeless is fiscally responsible for those students.
I see. Well, I was just curious. That wasn't part of my concern. Looking at the reserve balance, and it says here that you were talking about. I thank you for the actuarial comment about the medical reserve, because that puts that into a little bit easier to understand. And I know this is a huge document. You guys must work forever on it, so I appreciate the hard work. It says here that we need to guard against a budget shortfall, which would require a special tax on taxpayers. when I read that, I'm thinking, oh, well, so we're being taxed to avoid a special tax. I mean, we're being taxed to ensure a surplus so that we don't happen to fall below what we have and need a special tax. That doesn't really, that sounds to me like you're kind of padding the budget.
Nope. We build the budget as if we are going to spend 100% of the funds.
So is this budget based off of the actual budget or off of last year's budget?
No,
Well, you say 3%.
the actual budget.
Actual budget, new
But you don't budget off of actuals, you budget off of what last year's budget was.
No.
No.
We rebuild the budget every year.
So your 3% is going to be off of actuals? Your 3% increase?
It's off of our
Their
estimate.
requested budgets for the items they need for the 25-26 school year. The staff that we have in place now, what they will be paid in 25-26, and then everyone enters in all the items they will need to run their programs for 25-26.
Right, okay, so, but when you say to us that we're going to have, that Woodbridge is going to be 7.8% increase, 7.85%, that's off of last year's budget or off of last year's actuals?
No, it's off of the estimate for the 25-26 school year. Goes back to the
You're
statute.
estimating that the 25-26 school year will be 7.85% for Woodbridge, more than what it would have been
For the 24-25, the current school year.
actuals or
It's
budget?
budget.
Budget.
Those numbers are always budget to budget.
Budget to budget, right. So in other words, the surplus that's in there for the 24-25 to keep us from having to have a vote on the taxes, are also being increased. I mean, if we have $1 million surplus and the budget is 3.6% higher, we're going to have a 3.6%.
We currently do not have $1 million surplus for 24-25.
I'm just, that was an example, that wasn't what I'm saying is that we're going to have an increase this year to be taxed on based on what we were taxed last year, correct?
Based on the 24-25 budget.
Okay.
It's the change in the budget.
Yes.
When I looked at the fact that some of this was a little bit of an explanation, I suppose, to taxpayers, but a regional school district cannot have a reserve balance in its general fund like the member towns, and therefore we need to guard against a budget shortfall, which would require a special tax on taxpayers. So then you talk about budget balancers, and it's, without these requested budget increases, we would have been, you're talking about things like cost avoidances, that without these, your requested budget increases would have been substantially higher than the 5-year average total budget increases of 2.64%. It just sounds like you're trying to justify it, and it doesn't really ring particularly true to me. I looked on page 62 of your document, and it says each year we would defer more items from your capital budget to later years, and I understand that. We're all doing that. It's a mess. It's hard to deal with, but because of any one of the major items, you list a bunch of them, it would have made the percentage increase in total expenditures higher than what the taxpayers were likely to support. When I look at those various statements throughout this budget, it just sounds like you don't want the taxpayers to have a vote on when you're going to spend money on these things. If you're running a surplus and paying down your capital expenses, I think that's great, but it very much looks like you've said you don't think the taxpayers are going to support those things in other statements in this document. And I think that's a bad thing to tell the taxpayers, that you don't want to risk going to them if you have a shortfall because you don't think they'll pay up. Well, the state law requires us to pay up, but we're not. If there's a shortfall, we're going to pay up.
Well, I mean, one, that's not the intent of any of the language in there to say that we're worried the taxpayers wouldn't, but it is an arduous process to go back out to referendum in all 3 towns, get those funds. So if that were to happen, most likely it'd be later in the year. It could be excessive insurance claims. We could have bills due that we wouldn't have funds for, and we would still have to go through that referendum process in order to get those additional funds.
We've had to vote on one of those before. I recall one summer, we had to vote on a tax thing for paying a school.
And that's a cost to the towns too, to hold another referendum, so.
No doubt, but the answer seems to be to overtax. I mean, that's what it's stated in here, is that.
Well, again, a town can have a fund balance, and if any department in the town runs into a shortfall, your fund balance can be used without a vote and without a referendum, certainly with the meeting of members of these boards to compensate for that deficit. We cannot have a fund balance, and we also, by law, cannot have a budget that ends in the red. And so and we will always have to have a surplus at the end of our budget year. It's the way that the statutes are structured.
Understand. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Dr. Byers, do we thank you also for addressing that question I had about technology replacement. So I appreciate you addressing that head on. Do we pay out unused sick leave for the state of Connecticut?
No, there are contracts that have that as a provision, and I believe we have a very small handful of people who are grandfathered into those. Most of our contracts were rewritten so that we do not pay unused sick leave.
Okay, but we allow them. I think we have to allow them to carry forward a certain amount.
Yes,
right?
They have to carry it forward, and we also, once they have it, can't necessarily deny their use if they've earned it.
Got it. Thank you. Parking revenue. I was surprised to see a parking revenue line. What does that represent? Is that just parking passes, things of that nature?
Yes, the parking stickers that the students pay for parking.
And it's primarily students that pay those fees.
Yes.
Have
Or
we
their
changed
parents.
those prices at all in the past 5 or 6 years? Because I noticed the line is pretty
We haven't
stagnant.
changed them in the past 10 years. Yes, so it's the same price. It actually came up for discussion at our board and finance committees last year, and I think ultimately in the end they voted to keep them the same that they've been for the past 10 years.
Yeah, that's just something I would look at. I mean, with inflation that we've experienced over the past 5 years, maybe an adjustment is necessary. Not significant or material by any means, but just something to keep into consideration. Rental income. What primarily do we get from rental income?
That's our building rental, when outside groups, other than town agencies and such, want to rent.
For the
our
gymnasium or
facilities.
things like that.
Gymnasiums, the auditorium.
I noticed it's down pretty significantly. There's just less events that we're having or hosting.
Yeah, we saw a swing after, again, COVID, that people weren't using the facilities, and then I think when they went back, they found other alternatives, and so it's just not what it used to be.
Probably more Zoom use, so, okay. Thank you, I appreciate your information and your presentation.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time you put into this. This looks, I've been through a few equity budgets in my life, and I know how hard you work to get it there. So thank you so much, and good luck going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate the time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, we are, I still call them tabs, tab 1190, because I don't know what I'm supposed to call them. And I believe we're gonna hear about the center, the former fire station, medical services and animal control, and Tony is going to, 1190 is the number we want.
Thank you. The center building budget is primarily utilities for the building. And the one question in this budget, of course, is electricity. And it's the same question in all the budgets that have electricity. And the primary driver there is, of course, which was mentioned earlier in this presentation, the public benefits charge, which you'll see consistently throughout all of our budget electric line items. And so we're keeping in close contact with the United Illuminating and to determine the impact of that next year when it decreases, if it decreases, and what the timing is on that. Because there's several portions to that charge, including a supportive millstone plant is one portion of the charge, and another portion is our unpaid utility bills from previous years. So I'm hopeful to get more clarity on that in by March, so we can then adjust these accordingly, hopefully at the Board of Finance meeting in March. That's sort of our goal. I think I was a little conservative on some of these, so if they're adjusted, it's hopefully down.
It's always hopefully down.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
So that's really the big item there.
okay.
The next budget, as you can see, was retitled, sort of in the process here of retitling that from the former firehouse to the Community and Cultural Center. And in this particular budget, not sure the timing on the facility, so sort of kept it, the utility use somewhat, you see the increase in the electricity there also, kept the electricity use somewhat as it is now. Once we start using the facility, we can always adjust that. As was indicated earlier, we do have some reserve funds that we could apply to the building once we get a better idea. I didn't think it was appropriate so early on to be increasing these line items when we're not quite sure what the impact will be. So,
Tony, how would we handle it if the building does come online, say in the summer or the fall?
so the facility, it's a 6-month schedule, you'd say, right? So we'll probably be done October, by the time we get started.
Fall.
Sometime in the fall, yeah.
Sometime
In the fall.
Late fall, yeah.
So about 9 months of the year
Could
next
be.
year.
It could be.
So would
Based
we
on the
handle that
programming.
with contingency?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, yes.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Any questions? Pretty straightforward, okay.
The next budget is medical services. I would say the large item in here, of course, is the contract with AMR, and that's for our paramedic. And the contract last we engaged with AMR was a 5-year contract, and expires or is up December of this year. So it's sort of an estimate as to what the impact will be in the latter half of the fiscal year. But the first half of the fiscal year is, of course, under contract. So that's the major item here.
Will that be a 5-year again, probably, or
Don't
you
know.
just don't know at this point?
Don't know at this point what the
Okay.
plan is to move forward.
Okay, absolutely, gotta get it done,
Yeah.
right.
Tony,
And
is
not
that,
have it.
is that something that, at what time in the year will the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance be hearing more about that?
So typically, we try to get that accomplished. It would probably be early fall. That's my guess.
Last time we did it, that was like that,
Yeah, that was how it was last time.
September.
September, yeah.
September,
September, around there.
So again, that'll be about 9 months of impact that
It would be 6
should be
months because the current contract goes
Goes to
to December.
to December.
Yeah.
So potentially, in the fall, we'll know the remaining 6 months.
Correct.
And again, contingency? is that-
Correct,
okay.
yeah. So we had one
Starting
part
to
of the,
get the
part of
hang of it.
having, right, and part of the benefit of having a fund balance that is funded, at our appropriate level, is that you can take, some of these risks and not have to tax for them right away, immediately.
To David's point earlier.
Yeah, it's available to us, it's not available to Amity.
Right.
Although they can bond.
They could,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Okay. The last item is animal control. So animal control, we are a member, we are in a group of other towns. So animal control is a separate fund, and all we fund out of the general fund is the town's portion. So you can see the town's portion goes up 1.49%, but really the operation is much larger. So the town's funding is 119,000, but I've included the complete budget so you can see that the, we have to make it a little bigger, as do I. That the complete budget's $284,000. And that includes 2 full-time ACOs, part-time kennel help, and benefits. So the benefits for ACOs are in this budget, not in the benefits line, because we split that amongst the towns that we cooperate with. There's veterinary services, there is, and other related items for the shelter. So currently, we have, traditionally we've had Woodbridge, Bethany, and Seymour were the 3 towns that have been in this operation for the past few years. Well, just recently we've started taking calls and charging Beacon Falls on a per call and basis, and for a kennel charge whenever they have an animal at the shelter, to see if we can absorb the fees, the calls with the existing staff, because you sort of reach a tipping point where if you add more staff, it might not be worth the charge to add more staff to add the town. So we wanted to see if we could take the activity with the existing staff. So far, so good. So as you can see, that added we collect about $15,000 this year. Next year, it's probably at least $10,000. We'll see, maybe a little more. So that's why the budget, even though it goes up a little, our percentage is only 1.47%. So hopefully we can expand that relationship in the future. And but so far it's working well. So that's animal control.
Question on animal control.
Shoot, sure.
I've known people, and I'm one of them, who have brought stray cats in. Found them in the neighborhood, caught them, brought them to animal control. They wouldn't take them. They had to get snap tested. And the person who took them would have to pay $85 to $100 per animal to get them tested. And I asked them, because in the past I've caught cats and I brought them and they took them. Apparently it's changed, but it's not clear to people. So that's just something that I don't know, because I see here that they have vet services for $10,000.
Right.
But when I went down there, she said we have no money at all for any vet services or anything to get them tested. And it was kind of like, it was a negative to me.
This was recently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not long ago.
Okay.
So, and I'm just, so I ended up finding another home for them. But it's, it's just something that if we live here in town and you find them, and they were kittens, basically is, I kept them for a while and I found somebody to take them, but basically she almost told me is you have to just let them go and let them live wild, and that's what it is. And I don't think that's, personally, I don't think that's right, but
Look into that with them.
I saw the vet services in here, and there's money in here.
Well, it says vet services for animals at the shelter.
They won't, they won't
Right.
Yeah,
come in. I had
They're-
to take one home and I had to adopt it.
Yeah, so I'm just saying this
Yep.
is just something that, so I don't think it's really clear.
Well, we're happy
Because
to,
if you have an animal, you find an animal, you bring it to the shelter, you bring it, you don't want it outside, and then they won't take it, and now it's your responsibility because you found it.
Take it.
That's all,
It's a good point. and
I'm just
we'll-
bringing it up as a concern, that's all.
We'll discuss it with the ACOs and
I'm just
understand what
saying,
the
it's just something that,
clarification.
or maybe there should be,
Yeah.
maybe there should be an agreement with a local vet or something, who would then, if you had it, the vet would do it, and instead of charging $85 to $100, would do it maybe for $50, you get them tested, and then you could drop, if they're,
Well, clarity sounds like the right thing to do, but it's very nice that you bring them in.
I think we're
No,
missing
I
a
just-
revenue opportunity with Dwight's Ninja
I
School of
totally-
Cat Catching.
Right.
Like, I want in on that.
but I'm just saying, they're around the neighborhood, and
Well done, sir.
I see them at night on my Ring camera. They're around the house.
Right
And they're
shelter.
still around the house. I still got cats around the house. So.
Okay.
Definitely take a look at it.
But I just wanted to, that was the reason I'm asking.
Okay, absolutely, good,
Yeah,
that's a good
we'll
point.
find out if
bring
you're
that up.
barking at
Okay.
the wrong
No, I'm
tree.
just-
Okay, all right, good.
Meowing at the wrong tree.
Meowing at the wrong tree.
Tony, if there's a bunch of puppies and you call animal control and they come and pick them up, don't they? They don't.
Correct.
They
That's
do.
the way it
And when
works.
they do,
Correct,
there's a
yeah.
very specific process that they have in terms of, processing the animal and what they do in the vet care and things of that nature, so.
Yeah.
Has always been that way with cats.
Okay. Thank you all for being here.
I
We'll see you all
just
Thursday.
had a couple, I'm sorry.
Do you want to say
Yeah,
something?
just one more question for Tony in terms of, we didn't go over capital budgets for the last 4 items, is that
Yeah, there's,
nothing planned at this point in time? Okay.
Those
More
four.
cages for the cats.
Right. those 4 departments don't have any capital, items.
Okay, gotcha. So capital for the center, just so we know what to expect, where, anything that we're gonna do
It's in
there.
building maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? You all set?
Yeah.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second? Everybody's in favor?
I can't motion.
Go home.
Unanimous.
All right.
Same here for the Board of Selectmen, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.